My feet are here on Broadway, this blessed harvest morn, and all the ache that's in them for the spot where I was born. My weary hands are blistered from work in cold and heat, but all to swing a scythe again in fields of Irish wheat. For I the chance to wander back around the king's abode, 'tis soon I'd see the hawthorn tree by the old barn.
Fáilte Ireland, Killeen. My name is Farrell. I know most of you here, and I was just thinking if I had this many at my funeral, I'd be delighted. But I won't be there that day. So you're all very welcome. I'm the project manager on this wonderful project, Life on Machair, and we're here today to launch this little boat, this little life raft of hope for the coastal systems and for all the wonderful species that we find there. I'm not going to say anything controversial, and I'm not going to annoy anyone. I'm going to be as pleasant as possible and make sure it's an enjoyable day for everyone here. We have a great lineup of speakers. Some of them are sitting here in front of me, and we're all crowded in, and that's great. It looks good. So that's the running order for today. So we won't keep you standing too long, but you know, if you need to do the grey heron job and stand on one leg for a while and give the other a break, we can do that. So, Life on Machair. I just welcome you all, and in particular I want to welcome my team members. They're all here this morning, except for one of our team is still up in Donegal, and so I'd like to welcome Jackie Hunt. And I do want you to raise your hand, Jackie, because I can't see you. She's down there. Mar, who's down at the back as well. You see, they're trying to keep away from the front and away from the spotlight, and that's fine. And Erica Bodner, who's done so much work to get today organised. So it takes an awful lot to organise something like this. And then our nest protection wardens, I have Steve Rushford right there in front of me, Liam Rutledge, he's just sort of hybridised with Steve, and then Kieran Coyne and David Ferguson can't be with us today, but huge thank you to all the work everyone is doing. So welcome our very esteemed guest ministers, our wonderful speakers, and all the wonderful people who really, it's, you know, I think I've annoyed you at least once on this project, and I will be continuing to annoy you because you've shown so much enthusiasm for being here today. So a little bit about Life on Machair. It's an EU Life funded project focusing on Natura 2000 sites. We have 9 sites around the country. A special welcome to the people who put the project together, Aoife Delaney and Sean Kelly, with the great assistance of Claire Cooper. So a huge thank you. Although I might not be thanking you in 6 years' time, we thank you for putting the project together, and well done for making it so ambitious. So the lead beneficiaries are the National Parks and Wildlife Service, and welcome to all the regional and the scientific staff that are here today. Also welcome to the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and the Marine. Special welcome to Niall and Hannah Denniston, who can't be with us, who's done a lot of work for us there. Catherine Keena is representing Teagasc today. I'm representing on the project, and then Meg Walsh from Fáilte Ireland. So it really is a team effort. And those are just the beneficiaries, and then there's everyone in this room. There's all the different local authorities, there's the different NGOs, there's Leave No Trace here today, there's Clean Coasts, and there's so many that I know I will forget, and I see the acres teams, and I see all the people who are really pulling together to help us and to work with us. Not least the farming organisations, so the IFA, the INHFA, and all the other farming organisations that we come through. We're going to hear some of those voices today. Life projects, I don't know where I'd be without my little support group, the WhatsApp group with Derek McLaughlin and John Carey. It seems like every Friday evening we all seem to have a glass of wine in hand when we're WhatsApping each other and saying, well, how was your week? And it's like, okay, yeah, we'll get through next week, we'll be grand. So thanks to those guys for their emotional support. And the local farmers and the local communities, and it's great to see so many here today. And you're taking the journey with us on these sites. So all these coastal sites, they're farmed, and they're commonages in the main, and that means that everyone pulls together. Not one thing can be done without the support of everyone else in the group, and that has been a challenge and a gift for us in so many ways. And with that, I want to ask Joe Cannon, who's the chairperson of the local community centre here, and also the chairperson of the local gun club. And Joe's been very supportive. He's put me through my paces here in this hall a few times, I have to say. And I'm not sure why I asked him to say welcome, but come on up here, Joe, and say a word.
First time I had to stand before a mic like this, so. You're all very welcome here today to the Killeen Community Centre, and I want to especially welcome Pippa Hackett and Malcolm Noonan here. And I think Pippa was originally a Mayo woman, so hopefully you'll keep the dollars coming to us, Pippa. And I want to welcome Catherine and our team here she brought a great crowd here today with her. And hopefully it'll keep going from strength to strength. But as I say, the funding needs to be upped, because it's the farmer at the end of the day that has to get paid. And I hope you bring that on board. You're all very welcome. Thank you.
I knew he was going to look for money. It's always looking for money. So we're here today to celebrate the launch of Life on Machair. It's a 6-year project, 7.4 million, so 75% of that is coming from the EU Life Fund, and we really welcome that. Life projects are really developed where there's an issue that needs to be addressed, and on each of these coastal sites, the 9 that we have around the country, which are highlighted on this map, need a bit of tender loving care, and they need a little bit of focus and a little bit of looking after. They probably have fallen between stools over past years, because there were the commonages that were just on the edge, not the sort of exciting blanket bog commonages where you have lots of peat and lots of carbon, but they were just a holding ground, or maybe even a bit of a holding pen for thoughts and ideas over time. Officially, the project seeks to improve the condition of Ireland's Machair habitats and improve the ecological conditions for the species it supports by working positively with farming communities and those local to each of the project target areas. Now that's a wonderful sentence that really simplifies the legwork and the conversations and the chats and the talking that we'll be doing over the next 6 years, and it has just started. It's great to be here in this place to launch the project. we're on the doorstep of the Machair here, and we were down there this morning getting the heads blown off us, because that sense, you're right there on the Atlantic, and you're right there with the forces that shape Machair. And I suppose, you know, for lots of people, they say, well, what is Machair? And what is that word? So it's a Scots-Gaelic word, and it's been incorporated into the scientific language here. We only really recognise that we have Machair systems in Ireland in the 1980s, and you know, you knew you had them, you were living on them, but it was that parallel with the Machair systems in the Scottish, on the northwest coast of Scotland. But it's a habitat type, it's a system, it's a complex, it's a landscape, it's a community. This picture is from the Inishkees, which is one of the gems in the crown of the Irish Machair. And we'll have a short video from the Inishkees this morning as well. It shows the colour, but also the key components, the sand, the wind, the force of the Atlantic. No pile of sand will last there very long, so it gets blown right across the land and it sticks where the water level is high and the grass can establish. And then you get this wonderful sward of grasses and species-rich herbs, or species-rich grassland. And Karina's going to show us some wonderful pictures from the Mullen Peninsula this morning as well. But none of that would happen without that farming. So millennia of farming, of bringing the cattle out to the coast, wintering the cattle on the commonage, and then bringing them back up to the hills. Now that system has changed in the last 50 years, and we need to work with the systems, the new systems as well, and find a new balance and the right balance for these areas, because we can't turn back the clock. We have to move forward and work with what we have coming into the future. Why is it special? Why is life on Machair special? Well, for many reasons, and they're different for everybody, but I'll focus really on the core objectives of the project this morning. In terms of the waders that use the site, in terms of the pollinators, and obviously the habitats that support them. So working with the wonderful Laura, who's put all these next infographics together for us, we've put together a picture of the system. So obviously there's different habitats within the system, but they all work together in a symphony to create this place where a whole mosaic and lots of different species can work together. So that's where we need to work. So rather than pigeonholing in on one species or one tiny habitat, we're looking right out at the system level. So what do you see in this picture? Is it, many of you who are really into, you know, kind of surfing, you might see the surf, you might see, well, I want to walk my dog. There's an oyster catcher hiding out here. We have the fixed dune, and then we're into the Machair plain in the wetlands, and we're farming, usually backed by peatland areas. But we see the waders, and the waders here, waders are a group of birds that like to probe around, and they like to live in these open landscapes. We see we're focusing on 8 different species within this project, and they all use the Machair system. Now, why does that matter? So it matters because for a lot of these species, they've really been pushed to the outer limits. So here we're pushed right out to the edge, out to the margins of our island, because of the intensification of agriculture inland. So I grew up in the Midlands, and I spent most of my life picking stones with my family, because then we were reclaiming land and then doing all those wonderful things. And when we moved to our house and our land that was given to us by the commission, the Land Commission, I just have a vivid memory of birds laughing, landing beside you, you know, just a different landscape. And that intensification, which started from the 70s, has sort of slowly moved these species like lapwing, like snipe, out to these areas which haven't been as intensively developed. So these areas are really important for them. Some are particularly important and some are particularly vulnerable, and their future is uncertain. One in particular is the Dunlin, which has less than 50. We're not quite sure nationally how many are left, between 20 and 50 pairs. These sites are really important. There's 4 pairs here at this site and a number of pairs on the Inishkees. And really the future for them is uncertain, but we will definitely do everything we can through the course of the project to monitor and see how we can work with other sites to help them back. But we have the wonderful oyster catcher, the ringed plover, and yeah, I could go on about them for days, but then we also have the pollinators. And often people think, oh, she's talking about the bees again, but you know, the insect life, the insect community is a real expression of the health of these systems. So when we walk out across a Machair system, it should be buzzing. At this time of year, we're starting to see the queens coming out of hibernation, and you know, the whole place should be full of flowers and full of life. And that's where we want to see some of these Machair areas coming back to being buzzing with life again. So from our perspective, it's really about working with people to build a future for these healthy Machair systems through sustainable farming and sustainable tourism practices. So tourism is maybe new to some of these sites, and especially over the last few years when everybody wanted to stay at home and still have a nice holiday, they started coming out to these coastal areas a lot more. Camper van sales went through the roof, and maybe some of you have them. But these Machair sites, they're commonages, but they're not common land. And so how we facilitate and ensure people can enjoy the coast, how they can still sort of feel that wonder and awe, and you know, get to the beach without doing damage, get to the beach without disturbing the nests, get to the beach without, you know, making too many fires, you know. So we need to make sure we can inspire people and instill a love of these sites in them without wrecking them. Okay, so that's the key. So that's where we need to go with that. And with that, I'll hand over to the man himself, David Cabot.
Well, good morning. It's nice that you have all come here today to hear the Minister and Senator Hackett and odd people talking, such as myself. But I was just looking at my diary when I shot that film, and this is the entry. I keep a very careful diary of all the things I do, and particularly natural history. And I said, then we went over to the North Island, many Dunlin breeding, 6 or 7 pairs in Central Marsh, and 5 pairs in Large Field, Northwest Pond. 5 pairs in area outside the land wall, near the Bailey Moor, and a further 5 pairs, a total of 21 pairs of Dunlin in 1989, in July. Now, subsequent surveys have shown on the island that the Dunlin increased up to 34 pairs, which were surveyed by Dave Southerby in 2009. But since then, there's been a catastrophic decline in Dunlin. Now, the Dunlin is a peculiar species because what we think is going on there is not necessarily habitat loss or predator pressure, but it's something to do with what we call extinction vortex. And that is when populations become so small, there isn't enough gene flow between all the members of the population. Dunlin are very traditional. They always go back to the same area where they nest. And so what has happened is that the genes haven't been moving around in the population, and as a result of that, genetically, they're weak. They don't breed properly. The young are not very strong. They don't survive. And so the Dunlin are decreasing not only from habitat loss and predator pressure, but because of extinction vortex, as we call it. So that's a special case. So that's Inishkea. It's a marvellous place. It used to be. I mean, it was the best place in Ireland for waders. It's no longer important for waders, unfortunately. Now, I want to finish my talk about this area here. Now, this is White Strand and Corrigan Loch and Daughtry Loch. And I live just here, and I'm very lucky because in the morning when I have my breakfast, when I look out of my window with my telescope, I can actually see the breeding waders on the Machair, sitting on their nest. In fact, yesterday, we saw a lapwing sitting on his nest in one of these exclusion pens which had been put up at the project to keep the predators out. Now, Catherine mentioned about the structure of Machair. It's an extremely complicated mixture of habitats, from sand dune systems to forward beaches to lagoons, to grassy plain, lagoons in the background. And it's a very, very dynamic aspect of our environment. And this map here on the right-hand side is from a map prepared by a gentleman called Bode in 1808. And you can see here, there's no sand dune system here. There's an island here which is called Tullibone Island. And the sea used to come into Corrigan Loch here and around the back here. So there was no sand dune system in 1808. Can we have Nick on here? This is the Admiralty chart of 1850, again showing that there is sea coming in here. There was no Machair system here, no sand dune system here, just one little sandy island called Tullibone Island, and the sea going into Corrigan Loch there. Next, please. Now, I just want to put the area into historical context, and I want to show you 3 maps that are representative or authenticated representations of maps held in the British Museum. And the area we're talking about is down here. This is our area here. And you notice the word here called the sanctuary. And I think this area has always been very important historically for religious beliefs and sanctuary for meditation. Next, Catherine. That is from 16, what is it? Whatever it is. And this is the later map by Machair. And again, this is our area here. And still, it's called Ye Sanctuary, not the Sanctuary, Ye Sanctuary. That's a word that Catherine uses quite a lot. This area is interesting also because it's a dead end. And as a result of that, it wasn't impacted by outside cultural influences. So a lot of the language that used to be here would be a hangover from the Victorian times. And you can pick it up in some of the phrases that people use. So could we have the next one? That's 1636. And then this is from Petty's map, 1683. And again, the area down here is interesting because here is a church or a monastery which we think was founded by St. Colman, who was an Irish monk who fled from Lindisfarne when there was a big argument about the dates of Easter. There was a tussle in the church in England as to whether they should follow the Latin date for Easter or the Celtic date for Easter. Anyway, Colman got fed up and he migrated to Inishbofin in 666, and we think that he may have been responsible for the establishment of a small little monastery here, which we call Temple Dumbo. Unfortunately, it's been gobbled up by the sea and it's all gone, but we have some remnants from that which suggests that it was certainly active in 900. I think that's a lot, is it? Yeah, and then around this area we have a lot of archaeological monuments, such as the wedge-shaped passage grave down by Alto Loch, and we've got stone circles where they've got standing crosses and so on. So I think that apart from the Machair interest here, we have a deep cultural interest and a deep cultural heritage. And just one final point I want to make. Catherine was talking about the waders, and they're very important. But what happens in the winter? Machair is terribly important during the winter as well. Wild geese come here, whooper swans come here, and for other species such as the chough, which looks a bit like the jackdaw and has got others have. They use the Machair as one of their principal feeding areas. So it's not only important for pollinators in the summer and breeding waders, it's also important for wintering bird populations. And the problems that we're facing now are extremely serious, because with increased tourism to these areas, everybody wants to go to natural wild areas and experience nature and so on. We're suffering very bad impacts here. I've seen aircraft land on the Machair down opposite me. I've seen helicopters land on the beach. I've seen campers come in caravans, throwing rubbish into the dunes. I've seen people lighting fires. I've seen people coming with their racing cars doing wheelies on Machair, which is absolutely shocking. I've seen people coming with motorbikes doing scrambling up and down the dunes. And thankfully, we have a very good wildlife ranger here, Owen McGrail. And all I used to do would be to phone up Owen or send him photographs of the registration marks of the cars of the people who come here. Then Owen would take action. And fortunately, we didn't see these people again. But the tourism issue is going to be a really big one. And we've got to provide facilities, honeypots, where people will go for camping, restricted camping areas. We've got to have boardwalks in these areas, and we've got to have some information. It's all about information. People are very respectful to the environment, providing they understand it and they know what is going on. But this is what we're lacking, and that's why this project is wonderful, because it's spreading the information and making people aware of this big heritage. And it's something to be extremely proud of. And I'm glad to say that the Pearl Mussel project, which took place down on the mountain here, has been a great success. And farmers are going around saying this project was the best project in Ireland, and they're proud of it. And they will be proud of the Machair environment here, hopefully in years to come. Thank you.
It's a useful point here now to mention our project actions, which I meant to actually mention earlier in the discussion. And I suppose the key one really is about working together. So that tops everything, you know, working together, all of us here together, farmers, communities. But we also have targeted actions, specific actions for the habitats. So these systems are dynamic, and what David showed there was 150 years ago there were no dunes down where he lives in Teagasc. So where he lives is literally a stone's throw down that way. So the whole thing has changed. There's been a huge, dynamic movement of sand and then closing off of the lake and creating of that freshwater lake and the Machair complex in and of itself. But in some places where we have ongoing erosion, we are working with farmers to establish chestnut fencing to help to build back the dunes. We're exploring ideas about bringing seaweed onto the dunes to help the natural regeneration, collecting local native floral seed and spreading. Looking at the use of ivermectin in the animals, and we're very fortunate to have Katrina Mara working with us in terms of, she has great understanding of all the different pressures and all of the different needs of the farmers, and maybe trying to figure out ways that we can address those needs without being so severe and so heavy-handed in the use of those chemicals. For the waders, David mentioned some of the fencing, and I've been dreaming about fences, and I know that Jackie has just now recently set up her own fencing company because she's become an expert in fencing. I hate to lose her to that, but you know, especially with the nest protection wardens that we've been out, we set up 4 different temporary, keynote here is temporary, predator exclusion fences. So that's for the mammalian predators and ground predators, and they're really important to give the birds a chance. So we're down to such low numbers, we have to work on all levels to try and help them back. Okay, it's not good enough to say, well, you know, we'll get the habitat right. We have to take other measures as well, because we're in extreme times. And obviously the guys working on nest protection. So nest protection warden, it means that they are protecting the future chicks. So like that's making sure that the chicks fledge and can fly away to actually breed again another day. So it's all very well saying, oh, we've loads of birds down there, but then if their chicks are getting gobbled up, what's the point really? So that's not sustaining their future populations. From the Habitats and Pollinators, we're going to hear more about the actions there from Karina, from the Great Yellow Bumblebee Project, which we're delighted to be working with Karina on. Importantly, you have to monitor. So you have to keep an eye on what you did and, did what worked, and more importantly, what didn't work. So I'm a great believer in learning from your failures and coming back and pulling back and saying, well, that didn't work, how do we move on? Education and awareness, what David mentioned there about, people want to know. They want to know. They don't want to knowingly disturb birds, or they don't want to leave rubbish. They do want to leave rubbish, but they need to know that it's not the right thing. So our colleague David last week came across an otter that had been killed by a beer can ring, one of those things, and it was around its neck. It didn't choke it or suffocate it, it just meant it couldn't actually blow the bubbles into its fur so that it could actually, stay afloat when it was in the water, but it died. So, there's education and awareness. Everything we do matters, and how we work and live in these systems. And especially working with our colleagues in Fáilte Ireland, we do want to welcome people to the sites, but we need to welcome them and make sure that they're welcomed in the right way. And that helps work with the local communities as well, so that there's money coming to the local communities, and not just, I'm looking at you, Joe, yes I am, I'm thinking about the money. So it's all about building capacity, and I'll say a bit more about that towards the end. And